Well, I don't know if we're going to call this a first customer club episode, micro episode, whatever it is, but I thought it'd be so important to chat with you. And I'm glad that we got connected on LinkedIn, Ruben, because
Mm,
this is so complementary to what Gary Jackson and I talked about with regards to the Hailo story, seeing
mm.
it from another perspective and from the perspective of a sales leader.
But,
So for you, Ruben, as senior sales manager,
mm,
for what became MyTaxi, and rewind a little bit more previously, you started, as you mentioned, a business development manager for
mm,
Hailo. You have the word relationship manager in there on your profile,
yeah.
but what was the day-to-day like for you as a salesperson early days in Hailo?
It was interesting because I went from a very well-oiled, shall we say, well-oiled corporate machine like Addison Lee to a startup which really did still have its startup mentality,
Right.
which it really was. And I guess that for me was a real massive eye-opener because you could almost see all the amazing parts about Halo and what they could do, and you worked very closely with the product team. I mean, you could literally walk into the development department and say, "Listen, guys, I've had a client, and they said, can we make a slight amendment?" Whereas if you go to a well-established company, you've got to go through certain stages and certain protocols to ask for product development. So they had all the right pieces there, and it was just for me as a salesperson, it was almost like walking into a penny sweet shop with £50 in your pocket. You literally, it was almost like a dream come true for a salesperson because
Yeah.
you knew you had every single facet in there, in the product, in the service, to be able to sell it effectively.
Right, because you were still early enough that if you had a customer that really wanted something, you had the ability to tweak the product in order to satisfy them. It's almost like you had a really cool tool belt, and your
Mm,
tool belt allowed you to provide a multitude of different services and
mm,
ultimately solve a wider range of problems, right?
yeah.
In terms of how they were able to attract you, do you think you were particularly attracted to go and work for Hailo because it was a scrappy startup, because they were still figuring things out, and because the product team was literally half a hallway away? Or what do you think about Hailo allowed it so that it attracted you to join the team in the first place?
It was a dream. It was the vision that they had. I at that point was leaving from my previous employer anyway. I'd already been there and done what I wanted to do, so I needed a new challenge. And I was literally, and when I mean, I was almost 5 minutes away from signing a contract when Halo gave me a call, and the general manager came on and said, "Look, before you do that, come and talk to us." Us met with the general manager and the then head of sales, and basically they took me through the whole dream. They took me from what they want to be, where they want to be, how they're going to get there. And for me, it was yes. It was almost like I'm sold. You know, I'm sold it because you want to grow with something. And
Yeah.
and it was a massive opportunity, and there was no way I was going to say no to it. They were very open, and I guess this is what Gary installed and the other three founders installed, was that they had a very open policy. They're very honest and upfront as to where they were, very honest and front as to what their capabilities were, honest and front as to where they want to be and how they're going to get there. And for me, it was okay. Yeah, I want to be on board.
Yeah, being part of this dream for you, Ruben, was the dream like the upside of additional compensation? Was the dream the upside of being able to partake in actually reshaping the taxi industry? Was the dream something completely different? Was it a combination of things, or what made it a dream in your eyes?
I think that's a great question. The so for me, the monetary side, it's a given, obviously, because you're in sales. This is why we do sales, right? So you do it
Totally.
because you have, yeah, you expect to get paid like every other job. But for me, it was more than that. For me, it was the the opportunity to make a difference, to change, to be a part of a service that's coming in to make a massive footprint into the market, you know, because you could almost see how companies and providers were already shifting and changing their services because they want to be the next big thing. And I almost put Hailo as, in terms of, they're like a what we call a football team here, you know, a football team that has good managers, good players, good managers, okay training ground, okay stadium, but they were waiting for, you know, that investment. They were waiting for that push to really take them on to the next level. And I guess I joined them at the right time.
So if you were to provide advice to another startup, totally separate from Hailo, about how to attract the right kind of sales talent early, what would you say that formula is?
Passion. Don't look at their skill set, because at that time, what you want are people that can do, people that can roll their sleeves up. You know, if I told you some examples of what dedication was, you'd think it's crazy. But you know, for me, it's I took it, and I even do it now when I look at sales staff. For me, I look at, what's your passion, what is your desire, what is your need, what is it exactly that you want out of this? You know, what's the want? Skill set you can teach, right? We can teach. Basically, I've always said this: if we can teach a monkey or an animal to go up in a rocket and pull a couple of levers and go into space, right? You can pretty much teach a human to do a lot of things.
Yeah.
But what you can't teach and what you can't learn is that passion, is that desire, is that want, is that drive, you know, the drive to succeed. That's what I would say to start up. Look at those virtues before you look at the skill.
And we overlook that so much now. It's an employee needs to fit into a box. You know, it doesn't matter how passionate they are. It doesn't matter. Actually, it doesn't even matter what they did. It depends how long they did it for, in what particular role. And I feel when you do this, you miss out on a lot of talent. So, you know, because Hailo thought about that differently, it probably was why they were able to place so much value on you, and, you know, and perhaps why you're so satisfied with the job. What do you think is the number one thing that Hailo did right in terms of, you know, in terms of doing what they did to change the cab industry? You know, perhaps they didn't take out Uber, like, you know, and win the war. But as Gary Jackson alluded to, you know, you won a ton of battles along the way and fundamentally changed the industry, especially in the UK. What would you say is the number one thing that, from a business building perspective, that you think Hailo did right?
I think that they did. It was more than just one thing, but I think what really stood out is they weren't scared. Hailo were not scared. They were not scared to push boundaries. They were not scared to shake that tree. You know, they weren't scared to do things that failed. You know, that's what really impressed me. It was almost like that. Okay, get up, brush yourself off. Let's do it again. Get up, brush yourself off. Let's do it again.
You mentioned before there was no fear of failure.
None. It was almost where failure didn't exist. It was almost seen as a learning lesson. Okay, so you've learned. So now we know what not to do.
Yeah. So you, as a new hire, as a sales lead, as a relationship manager, you were not scared of going out and trying something.
Yeah. And it is that stigma that always comes across with whenever you're with a big corporate. And as you know, if you fail, the sights are on you. Whereas with Hailo, it was, okay, so you failed, it didn't work. What are we going to do now? What next? You know, okay, where else are we going to try? You know, and it was great. It was great because it took, as a sales lead and as a salesperson, it took that pressure away from you, knowing that you're not going to have these eyes on you if you fail. You can just get up and try again.
Yeah. What exactly did a day-to-day look like for you at Hailo, Ruben? What kind of things were you doing? Who was your target customer?
So day-to-day would be very different. So literally every day was different because we were still learning and still still making changes to the products and learning from clients. So it could be one day we could be out going into hotels, trying to get hotels on board, to the next day dressing up, walking into the office in suits, and everyone, because it was a startup, people looking at you funny, like, is he a finance guy?
Right, right.
But coming into the office in suits because we're off to see corporate clients. But it was different. You know, some days we were sitting with product development. The next day we were sitting in front of the senior management, breaking down exactly what we're looking to do, some of the new areas that we're looking to hit. Other days we were looking at expansion, putting together putting together manuals and how to pitch the service. So it could be different.
Yeah.
So different.
And from my experience, talking about, wanting to be a part of the dream and how that fits into the whole, I guess, compensation structure, it's more than just monetary compensation. Like, what values early stage
Yeah.
founders in early stage startups can offer employees, to me, it stems to responsibilities, upside. It stems to being part of something interesting, being part of that
Mm,
dream. I think that's such a value of providing that experience to
mm,
an early stage team member. The fact that you could walk in and your day was completely different every day and you felt like every day was basically a new set of experiments. I think that's something that culturally Hailo probably nailed and must have paid part of that success. It seems like one of the things that Hailo did extremely well was there was an extremely good message. It seems like it was an advantage that it was three cabbies and three tech entrepreneurs that formed the company together, because you
yeah.
understood the pain and the need of the cabbie perhaps better than anybody in the market, including Uber. How would
Mm.
you say that intimate connection with the market and that insider advantage, how did that play into the company, and how did that play into your experience and your ability to execute in sales?
Immensely, immensely, because it almost gave you a different way to look at what the actual value proposition was. You know, we kind of you took a step back and you looked differently at what the product is. The real value in it was the people behind it. And we weren't just talking about the staff that sat at head office in Somerset House. We talked about the drivers. They were the real selling power. These are the guys that had the knowledge.
Yeah.
And that, and I guess when you start to bring the knowledge of the corporate world, the knowledge of drivers together into one, and you build that value proposition, it almost felt as if we'd almost tapped into the best selling service, like the right way to sell it.
And did the founders help you in terms of crafting the message, in terms of making those first few sales? Or did you join and they were just like offloading responsibility? Like, okay, Ruben, you take care of that shit now.
No, they all got involved. All three of them. All three got involved. Senior management got involved. The CEO got involved. It was right from front to back end. You know,
Wow.
I learned things from the developers, and I guess because we were an okay sized team, but because we all worked in the same office, we all socialized. Like we would go to the social room and play table tennis. I'd be playing table tennis with the developers. But it's great because as a salesperson, I now have direct access to the one source that every salesperson wants to have, and that's the developers. Get to talk to these guys.
Yeah. Yeah. I've always felt that hypothetically, if you could create a company where the team that's responsible for the product and the team that were responsible for the sales and marketing, if they were the same team and had such crossover of communication and responsibility and a feeling of
Mm,
responsibility where they're actually trying to help each other out, whether it's at a ping pong table or whether it's in a boardroom or ideally both. It seems like that's such an unfair advantage to figuring out what to build and what to say and how to say it, right?
absolutely, because you know what you have is you have this a team of developers that sit there behind screens, and they're developing these amazing amazing parts of the service and changes. And it's almost like, okay, but why are they doing it? I know I'm being told to do it, and there's a project that we have to do, but what does it mean? And they
Right.
don't get to see it. They don't get to see what their work really actually does do.
Yeah, and it goes both ways. There's nothing more motivating for a developer than to take them out into the field with the sales team to see
Yeah.
what's going on, and for the salesperson to understand intimately why the product does what it does. What are the technology limitations? What are the
Mm.
features? It just fuels a better conversation. So it seems like a no-brainer, but not a lot of companies do it. And the
Yeah.
fact that you got to experience that in the early days of Hailo is just a gift of an experience. How have you been able to apply these lessons to your career ever since in City Fleet and any endeavor you've done since? Like, do you think that there's a takeaway message that we can look at from the Hailo story, particularly from the context of sales, that's like, here's how we could do sales better based on what we learned in that startup?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think for me, it was a newfound respect for these guys in development. I think that's what I really took away, is respecting the amount of work that goes into just making one tiny small change. Like, as a salesperson, it's always, well, can't you just change it? That's
Yeah.
kind of like the mentality, and because you, as a salesman, or salesperson, you have that mentality of client, which is, well, can't you just change it? But in reality, there's a huge
Yeah.
wave of development that has to go. And I think what I've taken from that is, yes, I have taken it into what I've done, what I'm doing now, what I will do in the future. It is that massive mark of respect that I have for these guys, and understanding what the implications are of making a change on whether it's a product, whether it's a platform, whether it's an app,
Yeah,
what
totally.
goes into it.
I got to ask you a hard question now, Ruben. We got
Okay.
it. We talked about some of the positive aspects of being part of the Hailo empire. Let's talk about a drawback. Why things let's talk about why things didn't go the way they could have gone. So Hailo changed the industry, no doubt about that. Hailo is still involved in the market today now through MyTaxi and FreeNow.
Mm.
Success story. But there were some failures along the way. There was some loss of identity that I understand about. There was understanding, are we building a taxi company or a tech company? There was some challenges expanding, entering new markets that ultimately happened unsuccessfully.
Yeah.
Do you look at these circumstances and say, here's one thing that I think Hailo did wrong?
I think we were very naive. I think sometimes Hailo became naive because it thought it had the right products and backing in terms of going into the market. I think that was a mistake, that we thought we were a lot bigger than what we actually were.
Hmm. So do you?
And that's not a bad thing. Every company
No.
wants to be big, but it's knowing what playground you want to play in.
So perhaps the expansion strategy was simply too aggressive?
Maybe, personally, I always thought, if you want to grow, you start small and you grow up slower, because then it becomes a bit more firm. You build your foundations, as opposed to wanting to just go out and get everything. You're not building your foundation. Should we call them the customers that will stick by you?
Right. Right. Yeah, it seems like the rollout strategy, there was a lot of success in Ireland, if I recall. There was
Big.
success in some areas. I'm a Canadian, so I know there is some success being built in Toronto already.
Mm.
I know that a lot of resources went into winning in markets like New
Mm.
York City in the U.S. And again, you ran up to a competitor that had 10 times the funding that you had.
Mm.
I don't know if there's a concrete lesson to be learned there, other than, yeah, maybe it's just to stage that rollout a little bit more carefully, to understand, let's dominate this area before
Yeah.
we dominate the next area, before we dominate the next
Mm.
area. And perhaps, you know what? perhaps there isn't necessarily a lesson to be learned for everything. Sometimes you just do something, you roll the dice, you come in
Yeah,
it with your baggage, with your beliefs, and all of a sudden, instead of the taxi cab industry, all of a sudden, this peer-to-peer market started growing.
yeah,
And, Hailo wasn't necessarily directly a part of Hailo was the application connecting a customer to a driver, but the whole back end of how that was built and the belief system was basically the taxi industry versus the peer-to-peer free market, right? So perhaps it was just perhaps it was the wrong cart to
mm,
lock the horse onto. Perhaps
mm,
there needed to be a shift in the vision, but in any way, shape, or form, I think the lessons that can be learned of how Hailo executed and got to $100 million in sales, I think is a story that applies to any startup.
yeah. I think from that point of view, and how did we grow in terms of sales, is we weren't scared, Luke. We were not scared. We pretty much tried every single sales plan, sales proposition. We changed the sales pitch until we got it right. And then once we got it right and we knew what market we really fit into, like I said, it's knowing what playground that we can play in. We're not going to go play
Yeah.
in the big boys, but let's go into this playground here that we know that we can win. And it's what I called the low hanging fruit. Let's pick those apples from the bottom of the tree where we know that we can pick them. And as we grow, we can start picking from up above.
No doubt, no doubt. If I convince Gary Jackson to tune into this call, is there anything you want to say to the guy?
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for giving me the opportunity. It really changed. It really did change the way I sell and the way I look at sales and the way I manage sales teams. I took so much. I probably learned more in those 4 years or in those few years that I had with MyTaxi about how to develop and grow a team than I ever have in any training course.
That's unbelievable to hear. If somebody is tuning into this chat, Ruben, and they are a sales person and they are considering whether they should join a startup or not, how would you make that decision?
How would I make it? I would say, don't be scared. Don't be scared to join. Startups always have that uncertainty, especially when it comes to funding, whether they're at seed level or B. There's always that uncertainty. Do it. Just do it. The experience that you'll get, whether you succeed or fail, the experience that you'll get from joining a startup company right at the beginning will stay with you for the rest of your life. You'll learn things. You'll be able to see how things are done differently. You'll be able to really work as a team because you won't just be selling. Your job
Yeah.
as a sales, if you join, you're not just a salesperson. You are part of the team. You'll have development ask you questions. You'll have product development. You'll have marketing. You'll have the CEO come and talk to you about what you guys are doing. You'll go out probably on the street handing out leaflets. Pretty much everything and anything. That's the beauty, is you learn a company right from the back end to the front end.
Yeah. And the thing is, I look back on this now, Ruben, about some of my startup experiences. How much I got paid in them, frankly, didn't matter. Like,
No,
we all got to save, we all got to plan for retirement, all that shit. But at the same time, when you look at the chance to work with a startup, I would say take a pay cut if you need to. Like, see it as an opportunity to learn. There
yeah,
might be all kinds of other upside, but just see it as an opportunity to learn. And if it's not for you, it's not for you. But as
yeah,
you said, it's now fueled your knowledge set and your passion for sales and business building outside of the Hailo context, outside of the startup concept, a context completely.
yeah.
So that's pretty powerful right there.
Well, I can tell you one thing now. What it's taught me, and it actually is very, very relevant to the period that we're in now.
Yeah.
So everybody talks about having a dynamic team and having a team that can pivot and change direction. These are all great buzzwords that everybody uses. Everybody uses, right? Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
I can tell you now, we really did pivot very quickly. We really did have a team that was dynamic, that could change very, very quickly. And that lesson I actually used and was able to implement into what I'm doing now. So when COVID-19 hit, we were very much focused on corporates, and we had to pivot as a team very, 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 very quickly. Otherwise, there will be no more jobs. And we had to pivot as a team. So we changed direction and moved more into medical and went out and searched. And we came back and we learned new processes. And that was only because I wasn't scared to pivot, because I'd already gone through that pain. I know what it's like. You know, you talk to the team and you say, look, guys, you know, we're going to do something different. It's going to be outside our comfort zone, but we've got to do it. And how do we do it? We just do it. Don't think about it. Let's just go after these guys, listen to what they want. Let's come back, speak to the development guys, and let's see if we can implement this.
Life is just one big experiment, isn't it?
Yep.
Yep. Is there anything that you want to end off on, Ruben? Any final thing that you didn't get a chance to say about your experience with Hailo, and or how it might apply to an entrepreneur out there that's considering doing a startup or a sales leader?
Yeah, I think if you're an entrepreneur or looking to move either into a startup company, it's no thought is crazy. No idea is crazy. You know, don't think of it as oh my God, will it work? Do you know what? You'll never find out unless you do it. Don't be scared. Make that step. Do it. If you think it, do it.
Yeah,
just do it.
Absolutely nailed it. How do people keep in touch with you, Ruben? How do I find you?
On LinkedIn. You can go on LinkedIn. You can find me on LinkedIn. Hopefully through this video, you'll be able to find me some more. I'm not a much of a Facebook person or a social I don't go into social Twitter, but I am on LinkedIn. I'm pretty much a very straightforward salesperson, very friendly. And I've been mentoring 2 guys that I met through LinkedIn at sales. So if you have any questions, reach out. More than happy to help.
Amazing.